Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that someone is not simply thinking about you? What if I told you that someone is carrying your memory inside them like a secret they cannot reveal, like a flame they cannot put out, like a chapter they cannot close, no matter how hard they try? What if I told you that the reason they cannot let you go is not because you begged them to stay, not because you chased after them, not because you forced yourself into their heart? The reason may be something much deeper. You awakened something inside them. You touched a part of their heart that had been silent for years. You reached a place within them that they thought they had forgotten existed. And now, what they feel is not ordinary affection. It is the kind of feeling that makes someone stare at their phone without sending a message. It makes them return to old conversations, remember your voice during quiet nights, and feel a sudden rush of emotion when your name appears. It is the kind of connection that does not always follow logic. It does not always arrive politely. Sometimes it enters the mind and refuses to leave. Ladies and gentlemen, the teachings of Carl Jung remind us that the human heart is much more complicated than it appears from the outside. What we call attraction is often deeper than simple attraction. What we call chemistry is sometimes a reflection of something hidden inside us. What we call love can sometimes be a meeting between the person standing in front of us and the unseen world living within us. Sometimes people do not fall in love only because of who you are. They fall in love because of what you awaken inside them. And that is why this message matters. When someone becomes deeply attached to you, there is usually a reason. There is usually a moment. There is usually something that changed the way they see you. But most people never recognize what they did. They think it was just luck. They think it was only timing. They think the other person simply developed feelings, but the truth is often much deeper than that. Maybe you looked at them in a way nobody else ever did. Maybe you listened to them when everyone else ignored their feelings. Maybe you gave them kindness when they were used to being disappointed. Maybe your smile carried a warmth they had never experienced before. Maybe you walked away at the exact moment they expected you to keep trying. Maybe you stayed calm when they were surrounded by confusion. Maybe you were honest in a world where many people only pretend. Maybe you carried a quiet confidence that made them feel safe, but also made them see parts of themselves they had been avoiding. And without realizing it, you became someone their unconscious mind had been searching for. This is one of the mysteries that Carl Jung wanted people to understand. The unconscious mind does not choose love in the same way the conscious mind does. The conscious mind looks at logic. It thinks about convenience, appearance, circumstances, and what makes sense. But the unconscious mind searches for recognition. It creates a feeling that says, "This person feels familiar. This person is showing me something about myself. This person is awakening something I did not know was missing." So when someone is deeply in love with you, the bigger question is not only why they are attached. The deeper question is, what did you awaken inside them? Because maybe you were not only kind. Maybe you reminded them of the love they always wanted but never received. Maybe you were not only confident. Maybe you reminded them of the person they used to be before life changed them. Maybe you were not only distant. Maybe your distance created a feeling they had never experienced before, a feeling of wanting something they could not simply take for granted. Maybe you were not only attractive. Maybe you carried an energy that their heart immediately recognized. And once that recognition happens, everything begins to change. People do not always become deeply attached because someone is perfect. Sometimes they become attached because that person opened a door inside them, a door they cannot easily close again. That person becomes more than just a person. They become a symbol, and symbols can become stronger than reality. Listen carefully, because this is where many people misunderstand love. When someone cannot stop thinking about you, it does not always mean the connection is completely healthy. Sometimes it means they have been deeply affected. Sometimes it means they have discovered emotions they were not prepared to experience. Sometimes it means they have finally met someone who challenged their old patterns. But sometimes it can also mean they are placing their own hidden feelings onto you. They may see in you everything they secretly desire, everything they secretly fear, everything they secretly miss within themselves. Carl Jung described this as projection. Projection happens when people take their own inner images, hopes, fears, and unfinished emotions and place them onto another person. They may think, "This is the person I have been waiting for." But sometimes what they are really feeling is this: "This person represents something my inner world has been searching for." And that is why these connections can feel so powerful. It is not only two people meeting, it is two experiences, two histories, two emotional worlds, two sets of memories and wounds coming together. And now, let me share something that many people struggle to accept. Sometimes the reason someone loves you so deeply is because you made them feel something they had never felt before. They may not only be attached to you, they may be attached to the version of themselves they discovered when they were with you. Think about that. Maybe around you they felt peaceful. Maybe around you they felt alive again. Maybe around you they felt understood. Maybe around you they felt strong. Maybe around you they felt vulnerable in a way that felt safe. Maybe around you they experienced softness after years of building walls. Maybe around you they finally felt valued, desired, accepted, and truly seen. That feeling can become incredibly powerful. When a person finds an emotion that fills a space inside them that has been empty for years, they do not easily forget it. They return to it through memories. They return to it through imagination. They return to it through longing. They begin searching for your presence even when you are not there. They compare new people to you. They start realizing that what they called normal life before meeting you was actually a life without emotional connection. This is why some people say they cannot explain what they feel, because logic often struggles to explain a connection that feels deeper than words. Sometimes it begins with something very small, a single conversation, a calm response, a moment of kindness, a quiet understanding, a shared laugh, a boundary you created, a message sent at the perfect moment, a goodbye that lasted longer than expected, a simple look that carried meaning, and somehow that small moment becomes the beginning of something much bigger. Ladies and gentlemen, one single action can stay inside a person's heart for years when they were ready to be changed by it. That is why this message carries so much meaning. Someone may be deeply in love with you because of something you did, but what is that something? Maybe it was the way you made them feel important without making them feel small. Maybe it was the way you never begged for their approval. Maybe it was the way you carried yourself with dignity when others were desperate for attention. Maybe it was the way you showed them a rare kind of love, then stepped back enough for them to understand its value. Maybe it was the way you reflected parts of themselves they had been avoiding, their fears, their insecurities, their hidden desires, their need to be chosen, their need to be understood, their need to heal, their need to feel seen. And once they saw themselves through your eyes, you became more than just another person. You became a mirror. And mirrors can be powerful in love. Because people do not only desire what they see, they often desire what they discover about themselves through what they see. The heart that has fallen deeply does not experience your actions in a simple way. It does not see your words, your presence, or your choices as ordinary moments. It experiences them as signs, signs of hope, signs of rejection, signs of possibility, signs of loss, signs of something meaningful that it cannot fully explain. This is why a person can sometimes become emotionally attached after experiencing uncertainty. The unknown creates questions, questions create imagination, imagination creates attachment, and attachment can create suffering. But that suffering can also make the connection feel even stronger because the mind keeps searching for answers and the heart keeps searching for meaning. But let us return to the deepest truth. Why would someone become so deeply in love with you? Because you did not only capture their attention, you reached something deeper inside them. You did not only speak to their ears, you spoke to a part of them that had been waiting to be understood. You did not simply enter their life, you entered their inner world. And when someone enters another person's inner world, they are not easily forgotten. There is something else you need to understand. Sometimes the reason someone feels such a powerful attraction toward you is because you are not easily controlled, owned, or predicted. Not because you are distant, not because you are cold, not because you do not care, but because you have a sense of yourself. You have your own identity, you have your own direction, you have your own inner strength. Your entire existence does not depend on someone else choosing you or approving of you. You do not have to constantly prove your worth. You do not have to chase attention. You simply exist as yourself. And that kind of presence can be incredibly powerful. People are often familiar with chaos. They are familiar with relationships filled with confusion, emotional ups and downs, and constant uncertainty. They become used to chasing something that keeps moving away from them. So when they meet someone who is calm, stable, and emotionally grounded, it can feel different. It can feel unusual. Their mind notices the contrast. Their emotions notice the contrast. Something inside them recognizes that this person carries an energy they have not experienced before. And sometimes that feeling becomes stronger than simple attraction. Sometimes attraction turns into deep attachment. Sometimes curiosity becomes emotional fixation. Because the human mind is often drawn toward what it cannot easily explain. When someone is always available, they may not always recognize the value of that presence. When someone is constantly seeking approval, others may feel the pressure of that need. But when someone is balanced, confident, and quietly powerful, it creates a different kind of feeling. It creates curiosity, it creates respect, it creates a desire to understand, and that feeling can grow into something much deeper, a love that stays in the mind, a love that creates questions, a love that continues even when distance appears. The psychologist Carl Jung explained that people are often drawn toward qualities they have hidden, rejected, or forgotten within themselves. What we do not fully accept in ourselves, we may search for in others. Someone who has hidden their emotions for years may feel deeply connected to someone who expresses love openly. Someone who has lived through instability may become attached to someone who brings peace. Someone who has spent their life feeling invisible may become deeply connected to the person who finally makes them feel noticed. Someone who has experienced emotional emptiness may hold tightly to the person who made them feel full again. So when someone becomes deeply in love with you, it may not only be about who you are. It may also be about what you awakened inside them. You may have become the answer to a need they never knew how to describe. That is why your presence can matter so much. That is why small moments can become unforgettable. Because people do not only remember what happened, they remember how they felt. And feelings are powerful. Feelings do not disappear simply because time passes. Feelings do not vanish just because someone tries to ignore them. Feelings remain connected to the moments where they felt strongest. Many of the deepest emotional connections are not created through one dramatic event. They are created through small moments, repeated over time. A small act of kindness, a small moment of understanding, a small smile, a small reassurance, a small conversation that made someone feel heard. Even moments of distance can become meaningful. A silence, an absence, a goodbye. A moment when someone realized your value only after you were no longer as close. Over time, the mind begins to recognize your presence as something familiar. The heart begins to remember your emotional pattern. The imagination begins to create a story around the connection. And one day, the person realizes they are no longer simply thinking about you. They are emotionally connected to the memory of you. They are carrying the feeling of you. They are returning to the idea of you again and again. That is when love begins to feel like gravity. And gravity is difficult to escape. But listen carefully. When someone feels deeply connected to you, there are two ways you can respond. You can become arrogant because you know you have an effect on them. Or you can become wise enough to understand that every deep connection comes with responsibility. Because when you touch someone's emotions, you are no longer dealing with something casual. You are dealing with something that can influence their thoughts, their choices, and even the way they see themselves. This is why some people struggle to forget unfinished connections, not always because the relationship was perfect, not because everything was easy, but because something meaningful happened. Something was awakened. Something changed. Something inside them moved. The connection may have ended, but the emotional impact continued. Maybe they never told you how important you were. Maybe they acted like they did not care. Maybe they tried to appear unaffected. Maybe they walked away. Maybe they protected themselves behind silence and pride. But deep inside, the feeling remained, because sometimes the heart remembers what a person cannot express. And sometimes the strongest emotional stories are the ones that were never fully spoken. The words that were never said can become the heaviest words of all. Silence can become regret. Silence can become longing. Silence can become a question that follows someone for years. A question of what could have happened. A question of what they lost. A question of whether they should have chosen differently. And this is why people often return. Not always physically. Sometimes they return through memories, through dreams, through random moments during the day, through places that remind them of you, through songs they hear, through familiar scents, through names that bring back emotions, because you became connected to something bigger than your physical presence. You became connected to a feeling. You became connected to a moment of awakening. And once someone experiences that kind of awakening, they cannot completely return to who they were before. And that is the hidden truth behind many intense connections. The person is not only responding to you, they are responding to the version of themselves that appears when they are around you. They are responding to the person they become in your presence, the person they want to understand, the person they want to become, the person they were afraid to face, the person they thought they had lost. You became a doorway to a part of themselves that had been waiting to be discovered. And people rarely forget the doors that changed their lives. So if someone feels deeply in love with you, understand this. Love is not always proven through words. Sometimes love is shown through actions, through consistency, through memories, through emotional return, through moments of vulnerability, through the struggle to move forward. But even then, we must understand something important. Strong emotions alone do not always mean true love. The human heart can become attached for many different reasons. Some reasons are beautiful. Some reasons are painful. Some reasons are healthy. Some reasons come from wounds that still need healing. The goal is not to become addicted to being wanted. The goal is not to measure your value by how intensely someone desires you. The true lesson is learning the difference between being genuinely loved and being used as a symbol for someone's unmet needs. That is where emotional wisdom begins. But even with that understanding, one mystery remains. Why you? Why did this person feel this way about you? Why did this connection become so intense? Why did your presence create such a powerful reaction? Maybe your energy was exactly what their mind and heart needed at that moment. Maybe your absence made them understand your importance. Maybe your honesty affected someone who had spent years surrounded by false words. Maybe your kindness softened a defense they had built for protection. Maybe your strength revealed a weakness they had hidden from everyone. Maybe your presence was the first time they felt truly understood. And when someone experiences that feeling, they rarely forget it. They may deny it. They may fight against it. They may distract themselves. They may hide behind pride. They may choose silence instead of honesty. But the feeling can remain. It can wait inside the mind. It can wait inside the heart. It can wait inside memories. It can appear in dreams. It can return in quiet moments when all distractions disappear. And then, eventually, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. They realize they never truly moved on. They realize their thoughts keep returning to the same person. They realize other connections do not create the same feeling. They realize that meeting you changed something inside them. And maybe that is what happened. Maybe you changed them. Maybe simply by being yourself, you created an impact you never noticed. Maybe through your words, maybe through your actions, maybe through the love you gave, maybe through the distance you created when you needed to protect yourself, maybe through the way you stayed calm when everything around you felt uncertain. You created an emotional impression that became difficult to erase, and that is why this message is not only about romance, it is about human connection. Someone may feel deeply connected to you because you awakened a part of them that had been asleep. Someone may feel deeply connected to you because you helped them experience emotions they had forgotten. Someone may feel deeply connected to you because they saw in you something they had been searching for within themselves. Someone may feel deeply connected to you because the bond was not only external, it was internal, it was emotional, it was symbolic, it became part of their personal story. Carl Jung believed that the human mind communicates through attraction, dreams, memories, and patterns. The things we cannot stop thinking about often reveal something deeper within us. Sometimes the person we are drawn toward is not only a person, sometimes they become a mirror, sometimes they become a lesson, sometimes they become a turning point, sometimes they become a symbol of the person we are trying to become, and perhaps that is the greatest truth. Someone's deep attachment to you is not a reason for you to lose your balance. It is not a reason to surrender your power. It is simply proof that your presence had meaning, because meaningful experiences leave marks. They change memories, they change emotions, they change decisions, they can even change the way someone sees themselves. You may have done something small that you forgot moments later, but to them, that moment may have become unforgettable. You may have shown kindness when they expected rejection. You may have listened when they expected to be ignored. You may have treated them with respect when others failed to notice them. You may have walked away with dignity when they expected you to break. You may have made them feel seen in a way that was both comforting and overwhelming. And now their mind returns to that feeling again and again, because the heart does not easily forget what deeply affected it. That is the mystery. That is the beauty. That is also the warning. Someone is deeply in love with you because you reached a place inside them that was waiting to be understood. You touched something hidden. You awakened something forgotten. You gave meaning to a feeling they could not explain. You became a memory their heart continues to revisit. And now they are not only loving you, they are trying to understand the impact you had on them. They are trying to understand why your memory remains powerful, why your presence can still be felt even in silence, why new attention does not always replace an old connection, why their heart continues returning to the same person, why they struggle to release something that never fully belonged to them. Because sometimes the strongest bonds are not created through possession, they are created through recognition, through emotional awakening, through the moment when one person's hidden needs meet another person's unexpected kindness. That is the tragedy and beauty of human connection. We meet people, we influence people, we change people, we leave people, but the mind keeps the memories that mattered. And when an emotional impression is strong enough, the mind can begin to see it as something destined, even when reality has taken a different path. So remember this: be careful with your energy. Be careful with your kindness. Be careful with your silence. Be careful with your distance. Be careful with your honesty. Be careful with the way you love. Because people remember, not always through words, sometimes through longing, sometimes through memories, sometimes through a feeling they carry for years, sometimes through a quiet ache for something they experienced only once. And if someone remembers you this deeply, understand that you were not just another person in their story. You became a significant moment. You became a mirror. You became a spark. You became a lesson. You became both a challenge and a comfort. You became the beginning of a feeling that continues to live inside them. That is why someone feels so deeply connected to you. That is why they struggle to let go. That is why your name can remain in their thoughts like a quiet secret. Because this is bigger than simple attraction. It is emotional, it is psychological, it is symbolic, it is human. And perhaps the most powerful part of love is this: love is not only about being chosen. Love is about being understood by the part of another person that cannot always find words. It is about touching something deep within them. It is about becoming a meaningful presence in someone's inner world. And once you become that, you are not easily forgotten. So pay attention to what your presence awakens. Pay attention to what your silence creates. Pay attention to what your love reveals. Pay attention to what your absence teaches. Pay attention to what your energy leaves behind. Because somewhere, someone may be feeling more than they are able to express. And the reason may be simple. It is because of you, because of what you gave, because of what you represented, because of the impact you created, and now their heart continues carrying the weight of remembering.